On today's episode, we're talking about the top waiver wire pickups for week 2, coming right up. And what is up, everyone? Welcome to the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast for Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. And I'm Chip, I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. If you'd like to share our podcast, you can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Pandora. If you want to watch us, you can watch us over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please do me a favor, hit subscribe and support the show so you don't miss any more episodes. And on today's episode, it is now time to build your team for the rest of the season, starting with the week 2 waiver wires. This is what we're talking about today. I'm going to give you my top waiver wire pickups for week 2. But what a crazy! Let's talk about the Monday Night Football game. I just ended the game, and now I'm doing the podcast. So it just ended. Crazy finish. Zay Jones with that last-minute touchdown. That was a crazy game. I mean, it was Baltimore really early, and then they just continued to just kind of grind it out. And they had that play to Bryan Edwards. But his knee was down, and then the interception happens, and then Lamar Jackson fumbles the ball. The Bears get the ball back. They try to kick a field goal, delay a game, pushes it back, and they throw the deep ball to Zay Jones for the win. I mean, crazy Monday night game. A good way to end the week 1 schedule. Unfortunately, if you listened to the podcast yesterday, my streak got broken by our commissioner. He beat me by like 6 points, so it's the first time I've lost in over a year, but it is what it is. Can't win them all. I mean, I guess you could because I did last year, but it's not going to happen this year, but it's all good. We'll just continue to build our team and see if we can make a comeback next week with the win and go from there, right? You're not going to be able to always go undefeated. So let's jump right into it then. So let's talk about the waiver wire pickups. This is going to be, it's a pretty decent list. I think I picked a lot of the guys I think most people are picking when it comes to their top picks. But I think that these guys on my list are guys that can contribute. They may not be guys that are going to be that league winner type of guy. But I do think that they can contribute from a week to week basis based on streaming and all that stuff. So starting with the quarterback position, really the biggest name on here that I'm going to choose is going to be Jameis Winston. I think Jameis Winston, he's 35% owned, but if you look what he did on Sunday, he's very efficient. He was very efficient. He only had 148 yards passing. He had 5 touchdown passes. If you look at what matchup he has next week, they play the Panthers. The Panthers, they played well against Zach Wilson, but Zach Wilson still had 2 touchdowns. He had over 250 yards passing. So I think, obviously, Jameis Winston, the Saints offense, is better than the Jets. So I think that's going to be something that you can take into consideration in streaming Jameis Winston. Now, if you're in a 10 or 12 team league, you probably have better options out there, but we have seen Jameis Winston being a really good fantasy quarterback. He's not necessarily a good NFL quarterback, but from a fantasy standpoint, if the team is down, garbage time, all that stuff, he's a guy that will put up points, even though he makes a lot of mistakes, like he did when he started with the Bucs a couple years ago. He was in the 30 for 30 club. But I do think that with Sean Payton, the offense it's catered differently around Jameis Winston. So I think Jameis Winston will be a fine stream this week if you really need. Now, if you're in a 16-team league, you're probably going to start Jameis Winston. But if you're in a 10 to 12 team league, I mean, unless you're in a 2 quarterback league, I think you can probably look at what's better out there. And Jameis Winston's probably going to have a favorable matchup, so he might be a guy that you can stream. And then going to the running back position. So I got 3 guys on this list. The biggest name is Elijah Mitchell. He is the running back for the San Francisco 49ers. He's the one who took over the rushing when Raheem Mostert went down. Now, he's only 2% owned. On Sunday, he had 19 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. The news came out on Monday that Raheem Mostert is going to miss about 8 weeks due to a knee injury. And then the only caveat about this is that we know that Trey Sermon, they drafted him. He was a healthy scratch on Sunday. However, because now that Raheem Mostert's out, does that now give some avenue to Trey Sermon to be able to now get some playing time and show what he can do and whatnot? So I think Elijah Mitchell will be the guy that will get the start, but Kyle Shanahan always plays a hot hand, so you can spend majority of your fab on Elijah Mitchell. I think he's a must-add type of guy, but I think that you gotta be careful how much you're spending, because it is going to be for at least 8 weeks, but it could happen where Trey Sermon comes out and blows up, or Jermichael Hasty or something like that, and you spent all that money on one guy. It's just kind of like last year when a lot of people dropped Nyheim, or they dropped a lot of money on Nyheim Hines, and he did nothing. People dropped him, and then it was one of those ebbs and flows with him all year long. So we'll see what happens with Elijah Mitchell, but he's definitely a guy to add. Then I got Kenneth Gainwell. He's the backup running back for the Eagles. He is 6% owned. On Sunday, he had 9 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown. Then he added 2 receptions for 6 yards. So if you always want to look like, Miles Sanders is not a full-time back. He gets majority of the time, but it just seems like they won't give full time to Miles Sanders, even though Miles Sanders is a decent runner and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. What was interesting about this on Sunday is that Boston Scott he wasn't active for this game, so that means Kenneth Gainwell has the inside backup position. So I think that he's definitely a guy that we've seen it last year, Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, that they like using 2 running backs. So Gainwell could give you some opportunity for a flex based on matchup, bye week, fill in, all that stuff. So he definitely would be a cheaper add if he's not already rostered. I know he's rostered in my main league, so I already checked that. But so that's one guy, and my last guy is Carlos Hyde. So Carlos Hyde, he is 15% owned. On Sunday, he had 9 carries for 44 yards, and he gave you another 2 receptions for 14 yards. So he led the Jags in rushing attempts, which was interesting based on James Robinson, being the guy that he was last year. But I know it's a new regimen. I know Urban Meyer had, coached Carlos Hyde, so there's more of a connection there, and James Robinson is just a guy that was there. But I don't know. I honestly don't like this pickup. I understand if you need some depth, and I think you want to have a guy that could possibly be the lead runner for that team, but I'm still going to believe that James Robinson is showed enough in his rookie season last year that they should give him a little more opportunity to play. But it's all about the game script, and they probably have certain packages for Carlos Hyde and James Robinson, and it just happens to be how efficient you are with those packages. So we'll end up seeing, but I think Carlos Hyde can be a pretty cheap add as well. Now going to the wide receiver position, my first guy on here is Tim Patrick. He's 1% owned, so he's a receiver for the Denver Broncos. Now that Jerry Jeudy has went down, I think that Tim Patrick or KJ Hamler are 2 guys that you could add. I would prefer Tim Patrick because we've seen more consistency with him. But still, you got already Cortland Sutton, you got Noah Fant. So Tim Patrick, this is a guy that you could add and stash and see what happens. And he's not a guy that you probably will start this week, but just at least have somebody on your roster just in case you have an injury in practice, or he starts getting a little more playing time. He's already there on your team rather than. And a lot of waiver wire pickups too is keeping other players from other league mates, right? So I don't think he's a guy that you need to it's like a must add guy, but I think he's a guy that can contribute, especially in a PPR format. So Tim Patrick definitely is a guy that could be added. My second guy here on my wide receiver list is Christian Kirk. Now he's 8% owned. He had a pretty good game. On Sunday, he had 5 catches for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. Now the questions to ask, is this the turning point for Christian Kirk? Now, he's been a guy that a lot of people had hoped that he was going to break out at some point. He had a great game on Sunday against the Titans, but was it just because it was an easy matchup? Was it because they put all their efforts on trying to stop DeAndre Hopkins, which did not happen, which freed up the rookie wide receiver than Christian Kirk? So one of those things is he's someone you can add. You could probably put in a $0 bid or a $1 bid on him. You get him, see what happens. A guy that you can just stash on your bench just in case. But just an option there for wide receiver. Then my third guy is Sterling Shepard. Now he's 31% owned. So if he's available in your league, he's probably a guy that I would add the most. He had 7 catches for 113 yards and a touchdown on 9 targets. So I think Sterling Shepard, he's been a very underrated slot wide receiver. When he's healthy, he's consistent, and I think he always produces. So I think that's the one thing is that the Giants have so many options for pass catchers, including Saquon Barkley, is that people don't realize like the connection that Daniel Jones and Sterling Shepard have is a pretty legitimate one, and I think that we will continue to see consistency from those two when it comes to Daniel Jones and the Sterling Shepard type of connection. So he's definitely a guy. He's usually probably drafted in most leagues, but he's a guy that people just tend to drop because he plays for the Giants. He's not really a big name, but he's definitely a consistent PPR wide receiver. And my next guy is Nelson Aguilar. He's 32% owned on Sunday against the Dolphins. He had 5 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. He led the team with 7 targets. He's a guy that, he's pretty much the number one guy. They got Jacoby Myers as well, but if you add on Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, I think Nelson Aguilar he's a smaller and faster wide receiver. So I think that gives opportunities based on packages for him, and Mac Jones needs to find a guy that he can connect with and trust and all that. As long as Nelson Aguilar does not drop the ball, he could be a pretty good add. I mean, he could be a flex against the Jets this week. I think that allows some possibilities there because of the matchup. But like I said, this is the week 2 waiver wires is really a hard waiver wire week because it's hard to figure out, is all this stuff going to be consistent? We can go based on the snap count, the number of targets, and the rush attempts and all that stuff, but a lot of these guys that we're talking about right now, I mean, there may be 1 or 2 guys that actually have legitimate chance of being on your roster for the rest of the season, but that's yet to be determined. That's why you don't blow your wad on a bunch of these guys right now. But I'm sure there's going to be, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to get more clarity. There'll be other guys like next week that we'll want to pick up, and then maybe these guys that we were talking about today are not brought up again, and it just all depends on the week. But right now, it's just trying to find a way to add some good depth to your roster. And my last wide receiver I have here is Jalen Rager. He was a guy that everyone was very, very high on. I was high on him last year as a rookie. Couldn't stay healthy, but yesterday he had a pretty good game. He had 6 catches for 49 yards and 1 touchdown. He had 6 targets. So, this is a guy that is fast. He's very talented. And I think that, that's a good Devontae Smith with Jalen Rager is a very good young core wide receivers that could produce some pretty good numbers. But it's one of those things where it's all about competition. It's all about the game script, and the Falcons just looked awful on Sunday against the Eagles, so it just looked, that's how it looked. But I think Jalen Rager is a decent pickup as well. Now, let's move on to the tight end position. I got 2 guys here. My first tight end is Cole Kmet. He's now owned in 28% of leagues. He had 5 catches for 42 yards and 7 targets. He is now the starter over Jimmy Graham. The thing that happened last year that Jimmy Graham would continue to get more snaps, but it was Cole Kmet getting those opportunities. He was on the field a lot more, and he just had the chances there and whatnot. So I think that with the Andy Dalton, Justin Fields situation, I know that obviously because we had Allen Robinson had 11 targets on Sunday night, right? But I think that a tight end, a reliable tight end, is always going to be that safety net for a quarterback, and especially a rookie quarterback. So I think that you'll continue to see consistency with Cole Kmet. Now, obviously, there's going to be a matchup depending on who's playing, but I think he's a decent add right now. And my second guy is Juwan Johnson. He is the wide receiver that transitioned to tight end for the New Orleans Saints. Now, he is 6% owned. The only thing about this, I'm not saying he's a must-add, but he's a guy that you want to try maybe monitor a little bit because Adam Troutman is the guy that had more targets on Sunday, right? So Troutman had more targets, but then Johnson got more looks in the red zone. He played more. He ran more routes. He's there on the field with more passing down. So that's the only thing about is Troutman got the targets, but he was on the field less. But then Juwan Johnson had, more of the red zone targets. He had the touchdowns and everything like that. So it's just one of those things. I don't think it's a must-add, but it's like a wait-and-see approach. Like, do I just put like a $1 or $0 bid on him just to have him on my bench and then have another tight end on my roster? Because more likely you have a tight end that's pretty good on your roster that's probably better, but at least add him to see if he continues to be consistent, and then if he does, then this may be the guy that allows you to have a really steady tight end, because tight end's a crapshoot. You got your Kittle, Kelsey, Darren Waller, and after that, it's up and down. So hopefully there will be more consistency with tight end this year. But if it's anything like last year, it doesn't hurt you to pick up a Juwan Johnson. So moving on to the defense. So I think the two defenses you can stream this week, if you don't have any of the top defenses, I think you can play the Browns versus the Texans, and then the Saints versus the Panthers. I think that if you look at what the Saints did against the Packers. Now, either the Packers were just complete hot garbage on Sunday, or the Saints are just good enough on defense where they're able to manipulate the field enough to be able to get Aaron Rodgers off his mark and all that stuff. But anyways, the Panthers don't have the same talent as the Packers. So I think, other than outside of like obviously Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, I feel like the Saints have a good enough defense to be able to have a pretty good fantasy outings. I think there's two defenses you can stream. So those are my top waiver wire pickups. In review, for quarterback, I got Jameis Winston. For running back, I got Elijah Mitchell, Kenneth Gainwell, Carlos Hyde. For wide receiver, I got Tim Patrick, Christian Kirk, Sterling Shepard, Nelson Aguilar, and Jalen Rager. And at tight end, I got Cole Kmet and Juwan Johnson. And for my defenses to stream this week, I have the Browns and the Saints. So that is it today for the waiver wire show. And thank you so much for listening today. Please like, comment, and share on the podcast on the YouTube channel. It really helps with the growth of the channel. And now on Thursday, I will have my previews for all the games for the week and all my starts and sits for the week. So don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss that episode. And if you want to see us or follow us on social media, we're on Instagram at Gridiron Fantasy Football. We're at the Gridiron Pod on Facebook and Twitter. So follow us on those platforms. So have a great day. I hope you guys won this week. And be smart with your fab budget. Don't try to blow your wad on one player, but be smart. Get the guys that are going to help your team, and go from there. All right. So we will see you on Thursday.